Alberta Primetime with Michael Higgins.
Welcome to Alberta Primetime. Ahead tonight, our Friday panel on infill projects fueling neighborhood frustrations. But first, big dollars for defense.
The fact that we're united, the fact that the United States is fully behind this, the fact that we're working together is going to reduce the threat environment 10 years from now.
The Prime Minister on NATO alliance members making official a new baseline defense spending target of 5% of GDP to be reached by 2035. And for Canada to meet that commitment, it will mean earmarking something on the order of $150 billion a year. And joining us now to discuss this and more, the University of Calgary's Jean-Christophe Boucher, an associate professor in the Department of Political Science. Dr. Boucher, good to see you, sir. Welcome back.
Thank you so much.
Now, this is being described as the biggest increase for Canada since the Second World War. So how would you describe this as a turning point for the Canadian Armed Forces?
It's long overdue. I think for several years now, experts and everyone, and even allies, have suggested that Canada's defense spending were too low for the kind of commitments we wanted to make in the world. And so slowly but surely, the Trudeau government kind of increased those budgets a little bit. But now this is a major inflection point where, we're moving into an environment where there's going to be a lot of dollars put on defense spending, a lot new platforms, a lot of transformation in the forces and how we think about defense policy in Canada. I think this is a significant increase.
Okay, so obviously the military at the center of this, but how far do you see this extra funding extending? Where could all of these dollars end up going?
So it's a good question, right? And to be honest, when you look at what the 3%, 3.5% means and what the 1.5, so essentially what the government of Canada said is they're going to spend 3.5% on defense spending and 1.5% on capital spending that are associated with national security. Now, there hasn't been a lot of really details on what that 3.5% has been. Some suggestion, for example, was that we would fold the Ghost Guard into that funding. The Americans do this anyway. So there's somewhat moving budget lines between Excel spreadsheet columns. So I don't think some of it will not be new money. But there's indications that we're going to start to increase funding for platforms or for different kinds of things, maybe new submarines. There's also conversations in Ottawa about cloud sovereignty, AI sovereignty, and that would be part of the funding a lot. So there's a lot of new things that we want to do in the defense environment that will be part of that funding.
But it could extend beyond defense, though, could it not?
Absolutely. So maybe we don't really see this, but right now in Ottawa, everything that touches foreign policy is on the draft block. The Carney government right now wants to push a new foreign policy document, which hasn't been done since the Martin years. So that's 20 years ago. There's also a new national security document that's coming in. So although the 3.5% on defense is really kind of the first big announcement on defense policy, we're going to see investment on national security conceived largely, borders, infrastructures, AI. So all across the board, all departments that touches national security or international security in certain fashion will see their spending increase. That means public safety and a lot of other actors in that ecosystem. So we're going to see a massive change in foreign policy in our posture and how we're doing things, but also a lot of new money into those capabilities. My sense is that in the next couple of years, we'll see a much more competent Canada, but also a more assertive one.
And how do you see Canadians responding to such an expansive change?
That's a good question. So for a long time, people and the common wisdom was that Canadians didn't like defense spending. And what I find interesting is that at the University of Calgary, we have had a 7-year funding looking at public opinion and national defense. And what we've seen systematically and consistently for the last 5 years is that Canadians are ready to spend more on defense. In fact, when we were asking Canadians, would you be willing to increase defense spending, a lot more people would say yes, even in Quebec than elsewhere. And I think when we're kind of looking into this, it also is tied to how Canadians are perceiving the international system. So, at the last couple of years, we've seen, actors like Russia, like China, like Iran have been a lot more aggressive in international space and challenging Western rule-based order. We're seeing right now the United States less willing to sustain that environment, and somehow Canada now is stuck into an environment where it has to fend for itself. So Canadians have been kind of responding to this, and we've seen this in the polls. So I'm not seeing a lot of opposition to those spending. I think most Canadians are ready for that.
Okay, so does the rest of the world, friendly or foe, respond in kind with military buildup to match NATO? What kind of global defense or threat environment could all of this create?
So So everywhere in the world, there's increased defense spending, not just in Russia or in China, but also amongst NATO allies. Some of the neighbors of Russia, for example, like Poland or the Baltic states, are spending almost 4% of their GDP on defense, and it makes sense because they're bordering Russia. But even in Germany, in France, in Japan, everywhere in the world, people are increasing their spending. And I think it's important for Canada too, because when we go abroad and when we try to cooperate and collaborate with these actors, the first question is always like, okay, so it's fun, Canada's here, what can you do? And if we have no money or no capabilities, then our capacity to shape these relationships are limited. People are saying like, well, Canada's nice, but they can't commit anything. Whereas now, because our capabilities will increase and because our allies will also increase these capabilities, it means that we'll have a more assertive Western alliance, but also it means that we're going to be able to move away maybe from a U.S.-centric environment into a much more multilateral world.
Okay, well, with that in mind, and the military obviously has a significant presence in our province, CFB Edmonton, Camp Wainwright, CFB Wainwright, maybe most notably Fort Wayne Cold Lake, Canada's busiest fighter base. What is this NATO commitment going to mean for military installations in Alberta?
So a couple of things. There's indications, for example, that salaries, wages within the armed forces will grow. I think that's a good news. There's a lot of indications, for example, that those didn't match Canadian wages. There's also a lot of these installations and capabilities are still, and infrastructures are lagging behind, or they need to be ameliorated or improved. So I think we're going to see a lot of those spending. And we're going to see spending all across the board, not just on defense or bases, but also in our industry. And when we listen to the Carney government, they're talking about AI, cloud computing. They're talking about all sorts of investment in all areas of our defense industry, from satellites to bullets and ammunition. So all across the spectrum, all across the defense industry, we're going to see a lot of investment into those environments.
Yeah, and some trickle down right into our province. Indeed. Okay, JC, we have to leave it there. Always good to hear from you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.
That's the University of Calgary's Jean-Christophe Boucher.